Um, did we forget anything? Did we get everything?
I think that was comprehensive.
Sweet. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Seawolves, to the second episode of BrookLand. Thank you for joining us once again. A lot to talk about this week. Joining us later on in the show is Stony Brook football head coach Chuck Priore, who will be on to talk about the upcoming season, about the upcoming summer schedule. The CAA summer meetings wrapped up last weekend, so we'll have some news from there, hopefully, to talk with him about. But first, before we get to football, it is still the spring, and college baseball is still ongoing. The NCAA tournament started this past weekend, and Stony Brook should have been there. We're on the as close as you could possibly get to making another appearance at the NCAA tournament. They came into the America East tournament as the top team once again this season. Made pretty easy work of the first two games against Maine and then against Hartford, and went into the final round of the America East tournament, needing to only win one game against Binghamton, which was the third-ranked team coming into the weekend, and they could not get it done. Binghamton won Game 6 to force a final Game 7, which was a back-and-forth affair that Stony Brook actually was up 7-4 in the closing innings of Game 7 and could not hang on, and ended up dropping a heartbreaker to SUNY rival Binghamton in the final Game 7. Binghamton advanced to the NCAA tournament for the second year in a row. Unfortunately, they were not able to eke out a win in the tournament, although they came close. They played Nebraska in the losers bracket of their regional, and actually had a lead going into the ninth inning, but could not hang on. Got a taste of their own medicine a little bit, and were eliminated in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So it's yet another Stony Brook team that gets to the edge and just cannot close. I don't know what's happening this year, but it's happened
It's been a weird season. It's been a weird season.
It's been a heartbreaking season. It's been a hard year to be a Stony Brook fan, you guys. This is rough. I guess we have nowhere to go but up.
The way I see it, it's better to be a fan of a team that wins a lot but loses in these situations than a team that, like, say, I don't know, like a team like program like UMBC or Maine that always loses, that never has a shot. So there's that. No disrespect to those programs. But.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting this year because it was a pretty confident team. They were a team that went through a rebuilding period last year and then kind of had a lot of veteran guys this year. We had the advent of Baron Tate this year, kind of two relievers that had a lot of fun with Stony Brook baseball. And then inevitably it came down to Brian Tatelman coming in as a reliever towards the end of the America East Championships, and he had a rough time. Also, freshman pitcher Cameron Stone gave up a few runs, and they were both guys that Stony Brook really relied on all year out in the bullpen. So it was tough. Yeah, you trust your guys that you went with all year, and that comes back in the end.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Stony Brook and Coach Matt Sank had all the confidence in the world, certainly in a pitcher like Cameron Stone, who was the America East Freshman of the Year this year. He had a great season, and certainly, coaches and fans are expecting a lot from him in the future. He pitched in that final Game 7. It was a bit of a rough affair, certainly. And while he's been pitching out of the bullpen primarily all year, he pitched 100 innings in that final Game 7, and it was rough, and it went to extras, and Stony Brook couldn't get it done. But yeah, I mean, there's I think Adrian's point is right in that this is a team that is built. Is not built for, kind of a one-off year. They're really kind of looking forward and making sure that they have the pieces in place to be a contender year after year. And Stony Brook, they've made appearances in the America East tournament, in I think it's now 5 years in a row, 4 years in a row. Certainly there was 2012, which is incredible, and we'll touch on that in a second. But even last year, where it was a rebuilding season, they did manage to make it to the tournament, America East tournament. This year, they couldn't get it done, but they were getting some national recognition towards the end of the season. They were ranked in some national polls. There was even some speculation that despite the loss in the tournament, they could potentially pick up an at-large bid based on their overall record, which is among the best in Division I. But that did not end up happening. It's hard for any school out of America East to get any kind of at-large bid, typically. Yeah, so it's been a rough year, as we said. Baseball lost in almost the exact same way that women's softball lost a week before, where they also came in, on the hottest of streaks as the #1 team in the conference, needing to win only one game in the final tournament weekend, and just could not get it done. Women's softball lost to Albany. Basketball is still heartbreaking to think about. They lost in the final game of their season. It's been tough, but hopefully we've paid our dues, and once the next athletic season gets underway, we'll get some better results next year. Speaking of college baseball, I should say, today on this day we're recording on June 1st, Sunday, June 1st, right now. Exactly 2 years ago today was Stony Brook's first round win over Miami in the regional in 2012 in the NCAA tournament. That was the first time where Stony Brook kind of raised some eyebrows before they made their incredible run to the College World Series. Miami was the #1 seed in their regional. They were the hosts at Coral Gables. Stony Brook came in as an absolutely nobody school, despite having, I think at the time they had the best record in Division I baseball, but they were coming out of a weak conference. Northeast baseball, always kind of gets the short shrift when it comes to national recognition. And yet Stony Brook dominated that game. They won 10-2. I was going back and reading all the highlights earlier today, 2 years later. And it was kind of really surprising. Miami ended up losing both of their games that they played. It was the first time that they had lost in a region that they had hosted in well over a decade. And then of course Stony Brook parlayed that into winning the super regional over LSU and making their run to Omaha. But yeah, today marks the 2-year anniversary of the start of that campaign. So it's college baseball plays on. No America East team left in the tournament. Today also. Yeah, so go ahead.
That's not to say that America East baseball is over yet. I just saw in the Baseball America top 500 rankings was Hartford pitcher Sean Newcomb coming in at number 13, which is impressive for a baseball draft because as opposed to basketball and football, players are drafted out of high school too, and a good amount of that top 15 were high school players. So that's equivalent, of a lottery pick or one of the first 5 to 10 picks in the NFL draft. So very impressive for an America East player to be looked at that high. Yeah. Yeah,
definitely. I think a lot of people expect Newcomb to go in the first round, as you said. Top 15 nationally in the early draft predictions. I've seen him, in mock drafts going as high as number 3 overall, which is insane. Others had him as, I think, number 6, the number 6 overall draft pick. I mean, he was just showing just incredible stuff. And in his last few games, including a couple against Stony Brook, there were, dozens of scouts, of MLB scouts, in the stadium there to watch Newcomb pitch. And really liked his stuff. Here he is in college, throwing, mid to low 90s on his fastball and, was just thoroughly dominating in the conference. And again, despite America East doesn't necessarily have the best reputation, there are some good players in America East. It's, that Stony Brook 2012 team, it's easy to forget that they had 7 draft picks that year, more than almost every team in Division I. So, it's not like Newcomb's pitching against, nobody hitters. There are probably other future MLB players that he has played against, and just the level of domination that he showed was really
and
kind
I think at least one of them was on Stony Brook this year. You want to move on to that?
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin Krause, who was the America East Player of the Year this year and was part of that 2012 team. he has also been getting quite a few looks of late by MLB scouts. Jason, have you seen any predictions about where he could potentially go in terms of
Right, yeah.
draft picks?
Right now, he's Baseball America, again, top 500 pre-draft rankings. He came in at number 292, which looks like a top 10 pick. The interesting thing about him is he's an outfielder and a catcher. He translates more towards the catcher end at the big league level. Another righty with a strong bat. He had 8 home runs this year. Had a rough 2013 with injuries, but again, between 2012 and 2014, had 90 RBIs. A guy who brings a lot of power to the table, and could be one of Stony Brook's first offensive players who gets a major league look.
Yeah, one thing I think is really interesting about Krause is that I believe he had 8 stolen bases in 11 attempts, which is unusual. Which to me is very unusual for a catcher.
Definitely. Yeah, I think he's just a very versatile player, which oftentimes you see in college. Typically you just have phenomenal athletes who are able to play multiple positions. Typically they're the ones that provide a lot of the offensive spark on these teams. They can plug holes pretty much anywhere position-wise. And Krause is one of those players. He's got multiple tools at his disposal. He was probably the biggest threat on offense for Stony Brook. So it'll definitely be interesting to see where he ends up in the Major League Draft coming up. So he would join a fairly distinguished and growing every year lineup of Seawolves that have made waves at the Major League level and on Major League teams, whether that's your MLB team or single, double, AAA affiliates. We've got a number of former Seawolves who are having pretty decent seasons this year. I think the most notable is Joe Nathan, who is of course probably Stony Brook's biggest pro sports graduate in the last 20 years. He is still closing out games. Which is kind of remarkable considering I didn't realize he's 39 years old this year. He's getting up there in terms of pro baseball players, but he has actually kind of been struggling this year. Jason, I know you've got some stats on his season.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Joe Nathan's an interesting guy. He's sold that he's not actually a Seawolf. He actually played on Stony Brook when they were Division III.
It's true.
He was drafted in 1995. He was actually drafted in the 6th round as a shortstop by the Giants, who tried to convert him to a pitcher, at which point he decided to leave the Giants farm system and come back to Stony Brook, get a degree in business, and then went back to the Giants, to which they converted him to a pitcher in the bullpen, in which he had a lot of success. He was then traded to the Twins, and now he's formulating what could be a Hall of Fame career for Stony Brook, which is very interesting. He's a 6-time All-Star. He won the Rolaids Relief Pitcher of the Year in 2009. So just a great career for Joe Nathan. Again, he had the $500,000 gift to Stony Brook that built Joe Nathan Field, which is now named after him, and has his number retired out there in right center field.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously, it's hard to be a closer when Mariano Rivera is still an active pitcher, which he has been for most of his career. But even in his prime, he was talked about in the same sentence as Mariano Rivera as being just one of the most dominant closers in the game. And again, he has had his struggles so far this season, but his career has just been remarkable. And Jason, as you said, certainly there's going to be a discussion when he does retire at some point about his Hall of Fame credentials. And he's got a pretty good argument, I would say, just in terms of the numbers that he's put up over his career. Agent, sorry, were you going to...
Well, on Nathan, I believe that there was, I think, a 5-year period where you could argue he was the best closer in all of baseball. In particular, I think it was around the mid to late 2000s, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in looking forward in terms of maybe a few more recent graduates, Tom Kohler is another one who came out of Stony Brook as one of the Seawolves' best pitchers in recent memory. He kind of lingered in the minors for a few years before finally breaking through at the major league level for Miami, for the Miami Marlins. In 2012, I think he made his major league debut, but finally kind of broke through into the rotation last season, where he was a decent pitcher. Certainly not, the ace of that rotation. He was, finished the year last year as their number 5 pitcher in the rotation. Put up decent numbers. Ended the year with a 4.4 ERA, a 5-10 record, which again I think speaks to the fact that he's playing for the Marlins, which last year certainly were not a very good team. And then opened this season incredibly well. Miami actually I think has been outperforming expectations all season so far. I think they're actually still second in the National League East, which is a pretty tough division of late, just behind the Braves. And Kohler, for the first month of the season, looked like their ace. I mean, he was, again, started the season as their number 5 pitcher, but had posted, by the end of April, had posted, I think it was the 8th lowest ERA in the majors. He didn't have all that an impressive record. I think Miami hasn't been providing him, or really very many of their pitchers, with a lot of offensive support. But he was looking, pretty dominant in the first part of the season. He had outstanding outings against the Mets, against the Nationals here in D.C., and I think was kind of really raising eyebrows among people who had been following the National League East. He's cooled down some of late. Right now he has a 4-5 record. So again, maybe not great on paper, but his ERA is 3.18, which is pretty good, especially if you're considered a number 5 starter for a team. And again, pitching against teams like the Braves and the Mets and the Nationals with pretty regularly. So he has definitely, his stock is definitely rising, I would say. Still pretty young. He's 28 at the beginning of this season. So it's promising to see another Seawolves alum, really kind of getting a lot of recognition for himself. He predates kind of the rebirth of the Stony Brook baseball team. I guess he graduated in 2009, maybe 2007, 2008, possibly. So yeah, I mean, he wasn't part of the team that Travis Jankowski and others came up with, but I think he certainly is familiar with Stony Brook baseball, and Stony Brook baseball certainly I think relied upon him greatly. He was the top pitcher for these Seawolves back when he was on campus, but it's been great to see his season progress so far. Obviously, it's not over. There's plenty of baseball to go, but definitely putting up some great numbers so far this year.
Yeah, the Marlins have put a lot on his shoulders now because their most promising pitcher, 22-year-old Jose Fernandez, went down with a UCL tear, and it looks like he's going to have he only had Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's going to be put on Tom Kohler now. And as you said, NL East that has a lot of promising young arms. So it's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, definitely. And he's definitely going to be expected to continue to contribute to this starting rotation, and will be an important part of this Miami franchise moving forward. And yeah, I mean, his most recent game, he actually just pitched yesterday against Atlanta, was tagged with the loss, but he pitched 7 innings, 7 hits, gave up 3 earned runs. That's a quality start right there. Again, Braves are considered to be one of the better teams in the National League East. Pretty much everybody picked them to win the division this year, or a lot of people certainly. So yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on the rest of his season. If anything, last year he ended 2013 on a really hot streak. I think his ERA, in the last month or so of this season was below 3, and that's pretty much exactly where he picked up so far this year. So, hopefully we continue to see him progressing at the major league level, and have a long, fruitful season ahead of him. So Kohler and Nathan are certainly not the only 2 Stony Brook Seawolves in the pros right now. We've been keeping an eye on a couple of football standouts as well. Chief among them is Michael Bamiro, who as many people will recall, kind of got caught up in a weird situation when he was originally signed by the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Bermiro had actually sought, along with the university, to get a waiver from the NCAA to come back to Stony Brook for his final season last year. They needed to seek a waiver because he had technically lost a year of eligibility because he had when he transferred from Pittsburgh, there was an issue because he had technically exhausted a year of eligibility because he had practiced with the team. I don't even think he made any
Well,
appearances.
The story with that is that the NCAA, they have a rule where as soon as someone enrolls at a school, that counts as a year of eligibility.
Right.
So what happened was Bermiro, it wasn't Pittsburgh, it was like Pittsburgh-Titusville.
Right.
It's like a satellite campus. They
That's
don't even have a football team. He just went there as a student. He wasn't pursuing football. Then he decided to come to Stony Brook, and they redshirted his first year, so that's like now 2 years gone. And I guess the NCAA, the way they are, they ruled that no, we're not going to give you back another year. Even though personally, I think it's completely ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. So he had a 5-year window, and
that's right.
The first year was exhausted by, as you said, a satellite campus of Pittsburgh. And even though it's shady because it's supposed to be 5 years at a football-eligible school, but they don't sponsor football. Either way, he didn't get to go in the draft, so he ended up being an undrafted free agent who ended up getting picked up by the Eagles, who now hold on to him right now.
I believe he was the first player to dodge the draft, I guess you could say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It was a really unique situation because the NCAA didn't hand down their decision until after the NFL draft had been completed, and Bermiro he didn't meet the eligibility requirements for the free agent supplemental draft, I should say. And so as a result, he ended up being an undrafted free agent, which gave him the opportunity to accept invitations from multiple teams and kind of pick the team that he most wanted to play for, and that team ended up being the Eagles, where he spent all of last season on their practice squad. But I think that people within the organization see a lot of potential in Bermiro for good reason. I mean, he is a huge dude. I think he's 6'8", 340. Just a massive human being. And so while he kind of lingered on the practice squad last season, there was a lot of expectations for him this year, and I know the Eagles are certainly hoping to get him to a point where they think he is ready to kind of fill some positions for the team this season and get some playing time. Now, there's been some question about where exactly he would fit into the Eagles roster. He has been playing while at Stony Brook. He was playing tackle, and that's where he ended up on the practice squad last season. But whether the Eagles think that he doesn't necessarily have the versatility for that position, or if they are just more concerned about their depth at the guard position. I've been reading reports in the last couple of weeks that they're actually trying to transition him into a guard position in the hopes that he can make the jump to the pros this season. Obviously teams haven't solidified their rosters yet, and Bermiro has definitely got some competition for one of those roster spots. But there are certainly a lot of people who think that he has a lot of potential to be a great player at the pro level, which would be certainly big for Bermiro, but a first for Stony Brook too, to have a player in the NFL who played football for Stony Brook. So we will be keeping close eyes on how he progresses throughout these summer practices, and once the roster is announced, hopefully we'll see Bermiro's name on it, even though that means I have to root for the Eagles now, which I just can't. I can't stomach. I can't do it.
I understand.
It's hard. I wish they'd get drafted by teams that I don't even have to be fans of them. Just I don't want to have to hate them. Like the Packers. Couldn't the Packers have picked up Bermiro?
No. Hopefully you like the terrible towel, because Pittsburgh now has their hands on Miguel Masonette, a graduate with.
I can deal with the towels.
Bermiro.
Yeah. Miguel Masonette, anyone who is a Seawolves football fan will remember his contributions to a team that won 4 straight conference titles in the Big South. Miguel Masonet is kind of an interesting case. He's been on at least half a dozen NFL teams at this point. Started with the Cleveland Browns.
He actually started with Philadelphia.
Oh, that's right.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, you're right. He started with Philly. He was there for maybe 2 weeks before they released him. Ended up with Cleveland for a while. They cut him right before they traded away Trent Richardson. So kind of an interesting question to see what would have happened if he was still on that with that squad. Then he had stints with any number of teams, the Jets for a little bit. Who else? Where else did he?
Chargers, I believe. The Colts had him at one point.
Yep, Colts. Before finally, a couple of months ago, got the call from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he ended up signing a reserve future contract with the Steelers, ahead of this summer. And so, it'll be interesting to see what the Steelers have in store for him. Jason, you were talking about how, the Steelers don't exactly have a ton of depth at the running back position.
Right.
What do you think the chances are that we might see him make the roster this year?
Right, so for the Steelers, they're kind of headlined by Le'Veon Bell, a sophomore running back who had a great season last year, I believe over 1,000 yards rushing, but doesn't have so much experience, and he's not necessarily an established running back yet in the league. So Miguel Masonet could fit in as a third or fourth running back. If not that, he could fit in also with special teams. Stony Brook had one of the best special teams in the country when he played at Stony Brook, so he definitely has some experience there. So that could be an avenue where he makes it on, but definitely he could see himself in that third or fourth spot. And then obviously have a chance to move up, considering they don't have too much experience as far as depth is concerned there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think anybody is kind of so naive to think that he would be a starter anywhere at this point. But, I think that he has shown just a tremendous talent. I know he's considered to be relatively small for the pros, but, obviously, despite having all of these teams release him, they see, the talent that's there, and it's hard to overlook the kind of year that he put together at Stony Brook. Really it's been 2 seasons where he was just putting up insane numbers for the Seawolves. So yeah, hopefully we are able to catch a glimpse of him for the Steelers, a team I don't hate. So I can get behind that. I can buy a Steelers Masonet jersey. Just need to get to that point first. And then there are a couple other Seawolves too who have gotten some attention. We haven't really seen anybody certainly sign contracts yet, but Malcolm Eugene is one player who, ahead of the draft, I don't think anybody expected him to get drafted, but there was some talk about him, possibly getting some attention, at the wide receiver position. Eugene put in a season of work for Stony Brook last year, despite not necessarily having the best passing unit in the CAA. When Eugene was able to make catches, he was among the best receivers at the FCS level. Just a tremendous talent. He transferred into Stony Brook from FSU, so certainly had kind of the FBS talent there. We haven't seen him get signed by any team yet, but it's certainly still plenty of time where a team that needs to fill a hole could potentially turn to him. Have you guys seen any other Seawolves?
So there's 3 guys on the team right now that have some NFL prospects. First of all, being, if he can stay healthy, Marcus Coker is a guy that is near the top of running backs that could graduate this year. I saw him in the top 25. Along with him is Will Tye, a Florida State guy who has good size for a tight end, really good hands, and good speed and good vision as well. So he's a guy graduating this year that could have some potential. And also looking forward to the year after, Stacy Bedell is a guy who's on plenty of top running back charts for the class of 2016. So he could draw some interest too and attention in the following year, possibly after Coker's graduation.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, we're still waiting for Stony Brook's first NFL draft pick. Masonet, there was some hope that he could potentially go in one of the late rounds last year, but that obviously did not end up happening. But it's only a matter of time, especially with the renewed emphasis on football, as Sean Hilburn talked about with us in our first episode. Football is only going to see more, have more resources to play with in the years to come. If what Sean Hilburn said comes to pass, which is that football needs to be kind of the top priority for any athletics program, but certainly at Stony Brook. So, I think we can expect to have more, these conversations down the road where we're talking about former Seawolves who are in the pros and in football, and hopefully make NFL rosters in the short term. But speaking of football, as I said at the top of the show, our guest this week is head coach Chuck Priore. He'll be on in a few minutes to talk a little bit about this upcoming season. Before we get to him, though, I thought it might be worth, maybe quickly breaking down the schedule. The schedule's been released now for a few weeks, but there are some interesting, potentially really interesting matchups for the Seawolves this year. By nature of the CAA being an 11-team conference now, we don't play every team every year. There's just not enough room in the schedule. So we do have some repeats from last year. I know one of the considerations that CAA always kind of takes into account is geography, and they try to kind of keep the northern teams of the CAA, and limit the amount of traveling they have to do to teams in North Carolina or Virginia. But we do have some new teams this year that we have yet to face. Including William and Mary. They are coming to Laval for homecoming this year in late September. That'll be interesting. William and Mary, I think, also surprised quite a few CAA prognosticators last year with the season they put together, so that could be an interesting game. Elon, who is a new CAA conference member, they are joining this year for the first time, and we will be traveling there. That's down in North Carolina. That's a bit of a hike. And then repeats from last year, we've got Towson on the road this year. That will be another interesting game. Stony Brook played them pretty tough last season, at least for the first half, at home, and they lost Terrence West this year, who Terrence West was, among the best running backs, if not the best running back in the FCS. I think it was a third-round draft pick this year. Yes. That's a huge loss, for a team like Towson, but there's no reason to expect that they won't be a contender again this year. We avoid Villanova this season, which is the other kind of, juggernaut in the CAA. Them and Towson and Maine, I guess, were really kind of duking it out for the top spot last season. Villanova's been a consistently good program in the conference for the last 4 or 5 years. Stony Brook, as people will remember, actually faced them in the first round of the FCS playoffs a couple years ago when Stony Brook was still in the Big South, and Villanova won the CAA that year by virtue of a tiebreaker. I mentioned Maine. We are also playing Maine this year at home. Last year we went on the road up there. Maine won the CAA last year. I think they had an 8-1 record in the conference, something like that. They were just an insanely great team last year. Made a run into the playoffs, but got tripped up. And then a couple others, James Madison, who we played last year. That was actually a surprising win for us last year, was it not? I think we went down there last week of the season, second to last week of the season, and pulled out a kind of surprising victory. Rhode Island, again, another team we beat last season. And then finally at Albany, I think possibly one of the best things about this new conference for us is this renewed Albany rivalry. It's really great that they are able to accommodate this rivalry and turn it into the last game of the season for both teams. It's going to be one of these situations similar to us in Liberty when we were in the Big South, where we trade locations and close out the season every year. Albany's fallen on some tough times in football of late. They just lost Coach Bob Ford, who was among the most winningest Division I football coaches ever last season. They had a rough year last year. I think they finished 1-11 maybe. So, I think Stony Brook has been the better team in this rivalry for the last few years, but it is still nonetheless fun and a great experience for the fans of both teams to look forward to every year. Do you guys have any thoughts looking forward to the fall, but potentially interesting matchups?
Yeah, definitely two things kind of stand out for me on the schedule. The first thing will be, as far as fans are concerned, we get a Thursday night game, 7 p.m. against Bryan, a team we played last year during homecoming. That'll be the first week of school for students, and right before Memorial Day weekend for fans. So it could be a nice 5-day weekend for fans, and then a nice beginning to the semester for students. And then at the end of the season, like you had highlighted before, you have two home games, November 8th and the 15th, against James Madison, the Dukes, as you kind of subtly dropped before Duke. And then you have Rhode Island, a team that Stony Brook ran over in the beginning of last year, of course, when they were still healthy. And then, like you said, Albany. So those last three games, all three teams Stony Brook had beat last year. The final game at Albany, which is at Bob Ford Field, the new facility. And another thing we have to remember about Albany is they're still catching up scholarship-wise. Yeah. They have a lot of new players coming in between the last 2 years, and they should be, much better than they've been in the past. And they played a lot of close games at Bob Ford Field. Mm-hmm. That's a facility kind of like when Laval first came into play that is attracting a lot of fans because it's new. It's something Albany didn't have before, a quality field. It's all turf. They have very similar looking facilities to Laval. And it could be a tough place to play, especially, I'm sure, November 22nd. That'll be cold weather. Yeah. And, of course, Albany always brings their A game when it comes to playing Stony Brook. So those last three games, that could decide if we get into the FCS playoffs. It could decide a lot of things. Also, the fates of Marcus Coker and Will Tye, who are definitely looking to add a shot at the NFL. So those last three games, all definitely winnable games, could make or break the season.
Yeah, Adrian, do you have any thoughts? Any matchups you're looking forward to?
Jason pretty much hit on everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are, certainly those games are going to be very interesting to watch. This is the first year that Stony Brook is actually going to have a full 12-game schedule. Since joining Division I, so it'll be definitely a test, but also potentially it'll play to Stony Brook's advantage because the one. Certainly there's no, mandatory rule that kind of determines teams that make it to the FCS playoffs or not. But certainly one of the unwritten rules is that you need to have 7 wins over Division I programs if you want to be considered for one of the at-large bids for the FCS playoffs. I don't know that there's ever been a team that's only had 6 wins that has earned a playoff berth, but that mission gets a lot easier when you have 12 games on your schedule. One of them is American International, so they aren't Division I, so that presumed victory won't count. But to still have 11 games on the schedule could be a big benefit for Stony Brook. Obviously, they need to win a majority of those games if they want to, have that consideration. But it's it would be a pretty strong resume if they're able to rack up 7. Division I victories this season. There's really kind of very few pushover teams this year. Obviously Rhode Island and Albany are kind of the bottom dwellers in the CAA, but both of those teams are certainly capable of pulling off a victory, and I think that Stony Brook's we're looking way ahead now, but this schedule could certainly play into Stony Brook's favor. Especially, we get a home game against Maine, which is a big obstacle, for the Seawolves this year. We're, home against James Madison. That will actually also be, a big game for the Seawolves. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to. Jason, as you said, the Thursday night game, that'll be the first time Stony Brook plays on Thursday night. And actually, it'll be the first time, and the second time will be next year. Prior to a few months ago, Stony Brook announced that they had picked up a game against Cincinnati, or not Cincinnati. Who was it?
You're thinking Toledo, right?
Toledo, yes. Out of the FBS, that game will also be played on a Thursday night. That's an away game. But it's interesting to see them trying some different things with the schedule this year. I think part of it, as you said, is necessitated by the fact that it's Labor Day weekend that week, and it's hard to get people to stick around for FCS football games when you've got the long weekend. So it'll be interesting to see if that has an effect on turnout. But yeah, definitely a lot to look forward to. That's one of the things we'll be talking about with head coach Chuck Priore. We had an opportunity to speak with him about the upcoming football season, about the CAA summer meetings, which just finished last weekend. So here now is that interview, which we conducted with him over the phone this week. Joining us now over the phone is Stony Brook Seawolves football head coach Chuck Priore, who has taken time out of his day to speak with us here on BrookLand and answer some questions about the upcoming season. Coach, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem, Adam.
So I understand you this past weekend were down at Hampton Head attending the conference summer meetings. Can you tell us anything that particularly came out of that might have any impact on this season or the upcoming season?
No, it was really just more of a meeting to, put some things out there for long-term plans of
Sure.
instant replay and long-term scheduling and increasing our TV exposure, but nothing specific that would pertain to anything this year.
Okay. Just out of curiosity. So one of the interesting storylines this summer and leading into the fall for fans is the situation at quarterback. Obviously, the team lost Lyle Legrand last year, and I know that there are a number of candidates that many people are talking about to fill that spot for this season. Connor Bednarski has, I think, been at the top of that list for most of the spring. He took most, if not all, of the snaps during the spring game. Can you talk a little bit about the quarterback situation, whether the plan is to still have Connor in there, or I understand John Kinder is transferring in from Syracuse. Can you maybe update us a little bit on that situation?
Sure. We have three quarterbacks in the program. Carlos Hernandez, who's been with us since his true freshman year, so he's going into his redshirt sophomore year. Carlos has the most experience in our program, and in actuality hurt his shoulder in about our second to last scrimmage. He did not play the last week of spring ball. That's why Connor took all the reps. Connor obviously transferred in a year ago from the junior college ranks and has been with us for one calendar year now. And then John Kinder from Syracuse joined us 2 weeks ago for our first summer session. He's here. I'm excited about having three quarterbacks, to be honest with you. I think we have each guy does something well. Our plan is to give each one the opportunity to show what they have in the early parts of preseason football, and sort of get a guide of where they are. They're all inexperienced at some point, so it's really going to be who really runs the offense efficiently and is able to make the big plays when we need it. So, but I think all three candidates are good candidates, and I'm excited about having three.
Great. You mentioned Carlos Hernandez and his shoulder injury. Injuries I think were a big problem last year. Obviously losing Coker for most of the season, and then actually recently in the last couple of months, I understand he broke his leg. And then Reuben Johnson and Jari Level, I know, was injured for a good part of the season last year. Can you update us maybe on some of the injuries that the team is battling through right now? Do you expect Coker to be ready for the fall?
Yeah, right now, if we were to open up camp, everybody in our program would be ready to go and ready to play. Marcus is fine. He's running already, and just needs a little bit of time, but we're healthy. The only person we lost for this calendar year will be John Haggard, who's a redshirt freshman linebacker who tore his ACL in the spring game. But other than that, we're healthy. We've got just under 2 months, 7 or 8 weeks of preparation left before we come to camp, and the guys are working hard.
And so, looking ahead a little bit to the fall, there's, I think, a lot of this obviously will be the second year in the CAA, and talking, now that you have a year of experience under your belt, and now that the team has a year of experience against, some pretty tough competition in the conference, I'm wondering if you could talk maybe a little bit about your thoughts for the schedule this year. There's some new opponents there. This is the first time, from my understanding, that the team will have a full 12-game schedule since joining Division One. Can you talk maybe a little bit about your expectations for year two?
Well, I think the schedule is a little friendlier from a perspective of we get to play some home games in September. Last year we were on the road for the first part of the month, the September, and then we don't have any conference games early, which I think is always a plus. We get to get into a few of our non-league games. And you want to be able to play at home early in the season. I mean, it's just a huge advantage. Expectations, I think, as you already mentioned, CAA is a very competitive league. Certainly, week in and week out, you're challenged. But as we saw last year, we were beating Townsend 23-21 or 21-20 with 2.5 minutes to go in the game. We had Maine up with Maine with a to go in the game, and one went to the national championship, and the other one, won the league. So, I think we understand that we can compete, and now it comes down to being able to build your depth. Certainly execute correctly during the games, keep your mistakes at a minimum, and there'll be a little bit of luck in there also.
Sure. One other question I had, particularly having to do with the CAA, one of the, I think, big changes as well is to be, from the recruiting perspective and, having, playing in the CAA, I'm sure must be a big selling point for potential recruits. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like, these last couple of seasons in terms of speaking with both freshmen and also potential transfers, and maybe how it differs or if it differs from your time playing in the Big South?
Yeah, I certainly think the association with the CAA has certainly helped Stony Brook on a lot of different levels. And speaking about the recruiting, I think it gives you an identity with some programs that are certainly traditionally champions. Delaware, Villanova, JMU have won national championships. The opportunity that more than one team on a regular basis gets into the national playoff scene. As many as 5 a few years ago, but on average 3 or 4 teams. Mm-hmm. I think kids want the opportunity to play against the best, and certainly want the opportunity for postseason opportunities. So it certainly has helped us talk to some different kids, and it certainly, I believe, has helped us yield some different kids. So it's been part of progression towards success. And I have a lot of respect for the Big South. I think Coastal Carolina and Liberty are as competitive as any teams that are in the CAA. I just think from top to bottom, it's a stronger conference.
Sure. I also was wondering, we spoke a little bit about the schedule, but one of the unique things this year is opening night, which is a Thursday night this year for the first time since joining Division One. Can you maybe speak a little bit about that decision, what the team's reaction was to playing under the lights to open the year instead of traditionally playing on the Saturday over Labor Day weekend? Was that, a mutually agreed upon decision for, attendance purposes, or what was the thinking behind it?
Yeah, I think, have it being Labor Day weekend, certainly a lot of kids, because you have we're actually off Monday and Tuesday from school after, after that. So, a lot of kids would get out of here. And so it was certainly, first and foremost, an attendance decision and our ability to, attract the local community, ability for our students, which, certainly is a big part of what we're doing here on campus to attend that game. And the administration on campus was very supportive of the change, because there are classes obviously on Thursday evening, and they had to be supportive of that, and they were. And I think it'll be a great opportunity. And I think we're also have it. We open up in 2016 on Thursday night also against North Dakota. So it'll happen to another year in 2 years.
And then I guess my last big question has to do with Stony Brook's new athletics director. We spoke to Sean Hilburn a couple weeks ago, right after his press conference. And, both at the conference and with us over the phone, he was stressing a lot about the importance for football to the, entire athletics program, and about the need to ensure that the team and the entire program have, adequate resources, and that elevating football will, just by extension, elevate the entire program. I'm wondering if you can maybe shed some light on your conversations with him. I'm sure hearing him say that must have been pretty encouraging, but I'm interested to hear your thought, as a coach about his arrival.
Yeah, I'm excited about working with Sean. He has not officially started yet, but he's done a lot of work here. I spent the weekend with him down in Hilton Head. I think he's a bright young man who really has a passion to be successful, and I think he has a passion to help Stony Brook be successful. The things he discussed are things that I think are the reasons he wanted to be at Stony Brook. He knows the importance of our big athletic programs, football, basketball, to be successful and to be the front porch of this university. Because it's simple marketing, it's simple branding, and we're going to get the article in the paper before some other things. So I think he gets that. I'm excited about his enthusiasm for football, and I'm certainly excited about working with him and trying to see the ideas he has to help us continue to be successful.
All right, great. Coach Priore, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. We will be at the CAA Media Day next month, so hopefully we'll have another chance to catch up then.
Look forward to it, Adam. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for taking the time to check out our second episode of BrookLand. Thanks to Seawolves football head coach Chuck Priore for taking time out of his day to speak with us. We will be back a couple more times throughout the summer. Obviously, it's a bit of a slow season for college athletics, but certainly ahead of the CAA Media Day, which is coming up in July, and a couple more times sprinkled between now and the start of football season in August. But hopefully you will be keeping tabs on Seawolves Nation. You can follow us online on Twitter at SBU Sports. And, of course, we'll be having updates throughout the summer at SeawolvesNation.com, all of the latest news out of the world of Stony Brook athletics. Jason and Adrian, great talking to you guys again. We will be back with episode 3, so definitely stay tuned, and thanks for checking us out.